Very good evening to you. This is First News. I'm Themba Hobe. President Robert Mugabe officially opened the first session of the 8th Parliament this morning. In his opening speech, the president committed to clamp down on corruption, tackle indigenization with renewed vigor, and to resist the impact of what he called illegal sanctions. He also pledged that during this parliament, legislation would be passed to revitalize ailing parastatals, saying that the heads of all parastatals will be forced to adopt key result area assessments. He also promised civil servants receiving poor salaries and working under poor conditions that their conditions would be improved. His speech received mixed reactions.
We should now make sure that the lives of people are uplifted. So I see this term of the office for this parliament focusing on that.
This parliament is going to see that legal terms, laws are done, the bills are done, that will make internationalization more faster on a legal track and even be financed to make that the objectives in a time frame they are met.
For the first time, it wasn't an insult. There were no insults as the usual insults that we normally get, and one hopes that we are moving and changing and going into a new political world and a new political value.
The MDCT was noticeable by its absence, having opted to boycott the ceremony.
This is consistent with our stance as the MDC that the election was a product of a monumental fraud on the part of ZANU-PF, and the MDC cannot be seen to bless that fraud by attending, because the person who emerged as a victor in that election is a product of a fraud, and for that reason we did not want to bless that fraud by attending.
This is a very eloquent statement that they are still troubled by the fact that they were boycotted by the people of Zimbabwe when ZANU-PF got a resounding and emphatic mandate for them.
A number of MDCT councillors in Redcliffe, Victoria Falls and Kwekwe have shocked their party by supporting the ZANU-PF candidates for mayor. In Kwekwe, MDCT and ZANU-PF have 7 councillors each, but ZANU-PF candidate for mayor, Matenda Madzoke, won 9 of the 14 votes. Redcliffe has 9 wards, of which 7 are MDCT and 2 are ZANU-PF. Yet ZANU-PF candidate for mayor, Freddy Kapuya, won 5 votes to 4, meaning 3 MDCT councillors voted for him. In Victoria Falls, MDCT has 7 wards, while ZANU-PF holds 3. ZANU-PF's mayoral candidate received 6 votes, again meaning 3 MDCT councillors opted for ZANU-PF. I asked analyst Pezisai Ruhanya for his thoughts on this issue.
There are several issues that we need to look at. One is the possibilities that they could have been bribed to do that, because if the MDC councillors did not want a particular candidate allegedly imposed by the party leadership, they could have voted one among themselves who has not been chosen by the leadership, like what they did in Mutare. But to really go out there and vote for a ZANU-PF candidate when you are in the MDC, it is rebellious, and it also points to possible issue of bribery and general indiscipline in the party.
And what's the effect on the MDC ultimately?
I think if you look at the history of the MDC in local government, there is nothing really new about what has happened, except that it has happened on a big scale. If you look at Makwarara, you remember that Makwarara was once elected as MDC and it turned out to be ZANU. They fired councillors in Chitungwiza and they went to ZANU. So there's nothing really new, but the fact is that there is a lack of decisive leadership in the MDC. One, to critically go to the bottom of the matter to say what is causing all those things and then take remedial action. Because, for instance, if you look at it this way, those people, the councillors, are elected representatives of a constituent. The people who voted for them are MDC. They were voted on the mandate of the MDC to deliver an MDC mandate in council. But they went on to vote for a ZANU-PF president, and it has nothing to do with the people. But it has something to do with the corrupted mind of those individuals, because purely those people did not get the mandate from the grassroots, from the MDC supporters, to go and elect a ZANU-PF official. I think the leadership is simply, if they find enough reasons, donated them to their home, which is ZANU. They have shown that they are ZANU, and they should go to ZANU.
Don't you think this is a sign of the MDC beginning to implode?
I don't think so. We can say if it were members of parliament, if it were senior members of the party, in the National Standing Committee, in the National Council, we could talk about implosion. But we cannot ignore the fact that there is indiscipline in the MDC, that there is factionalism in the MDC, and in the long run, they will destabilize the coherence of the party, and we may lead to a situation where we have in ZANU, where we have different factions vying for the president. So this is the beginning of what you are talking about. But it can only implode if the leadership take a blind eye, do not address the issues genuinely, do not look at the issues deeply with a view of addressing those issues. The leadership must not criminalize that conduct. They must go to the root causes of that issue and address the root causes. Because if they don't, it's too early for the MDC to start behaving in this manner. Because if they continue on this trend, we are witnessing the beginning of the end.
So you wouldn't suggest firing them as one of the ways of addressing the issue?
They should fire if they get enough reasons as to why they did what they did. If in fact there is evidence that these people were bought or were bribed, then there is need to fire them. Particularly those who voted for ZANU-PF councillors. But for those who voted for a particular MDC candidate who was not chosen by the leader, that is within their democratic internal framework. But to cross the floor, to vote for a party that rigged the election, to vote for any oppressive political party, surely that is going, that is crossing the line. That is crossing the red line.
In international news, United Nations chemical investigators last night confirmed the use of sarin nerve agent in an August 21st poison gas attack outside the Syrian capital, in a long-awaited report that confirmed the West's suspicions but was not intended to assign blame.
Today marks a grim but necessary step in the world's efforts to combat chemical weapons. The report of the United Nations mission to investigate allegations of the use of chemical weapons in Syria has concluded that chemical weapons were used on a relatively large scale in the Ghouta area of Damascus on August 21st, causing numerous casualties, particularly among civilians.
The report said the weather conditions on August 21st ensured that as many people as possible were killed or injured.
The mission has provided the world with an impartial and independent account. The results are overwhelming and indisputable. 85% of the blood samples tested positive for sarin. A majority of the environmental samples confirmed the use of sarin. A majority of the rockets or rockets fragments recovered were found to be carrying sarin.
The UN team was investigating only whether chemical weapons were used in the deadly assault, but it was not charged with concluding who launched the attack. Following the publication of the report, the United States and France immediately claimed it was proof of the Syrian government's guilt, while Russia claimed exactly the opposite. The death toll in the shooting that occurred in Washington yesterday has reached 12, while the number of injured is still unclear. The gunman has been identified as 34-year-old Aaron Alexis. He started shooting at the Washington Naval Yard just after 8 a.m. on Monday, as many of the 3,000 employees were arriving for work on the base. Mr. Alexis was killed on the scene by police, who still have no clear motive for the attack. In sports news, a Dutch cyclist has broken the world speed record by riding at over 134 kilometers per hour this weekend. 26-year-old Sebastian Bauer was riding a high-tech recumbent bike in the World Human-Powered Speed Challenge in Nevada, United States, when he reached a speed of 133.78 kilometers per hour. The speed was achieved on a 200-meter stretch of road with a run-up of 8 kilometers at Battle Mountain in the Nevada desert. And now for a slightly different sports story. A rugby player for the British and Irish Lions has apologized for a slight misbehavior at 10 Downing Street. The team was invited to the British Prime Minister's official residence to celebrate their 2-1 series win over Australia in June and July. During the official photograph, the centre, Manu Tualagi, thought he would have a little fun at David Cameron's expense. This morning he apologized via Twitter, saying, "Apologies for messing around on Lions photo. No offense intended." Chances of that happening in Zimbabwe? 0. And that brings us to the end of tonight's bulletin. On behalf of the crew, I wish you happy viewing on First TV, your nation, your station.